Welcome in for another edition of Armchair Quarterback. I'm David Allen, joined by only Coach Guy Settle today. It's just the dynamic duo here
a lot of talking today.
Oh yeah, you better get your throat clear. Each week we talk about our high school football teams in Cleveland County. We'll talk about Gardner-Webb and college football, and then we'll talk a little Carolina. Oh my goodness, talk about the Carolina Panthers. Very little Carolina Panthers and the NFL. We'll wrap that all up. Our buddy Paul Foster unable to be with us today, so we will give it a shot. We start with our high school teams. We go in alphabetical order, and as we always do, Burns and East Gaston. This is the only one of the three that gave up points on Friday night. I'll have to get on Coach Devine about that, Coach. But 49-20, a big win for the Bulldogs. And again, it was a ground and pound type offense for Burns on Friday night.
Yeah, and I'm assuming just by the score, I'm assuming that probably came late in the game, maybe some reserves that were getting some playing time. When we get to this point in time of the season, the coaches really have to fine-tune that playing time, because you got to give your starters, maybe even 2.5 quarters, maybe 3 quarters, even in these wash-away games, to the point where you got to get them out, because you don't want them to get hurt in those games that are totally over. And so maybe it was some points that were scored later. I don't have the stats on it at all.
McGowan was just 4 of 11 passing for 110 yards, and one of those was a 69-yarder to Surratt. So as far as the pass game concerned, not a lot there. Wilson was 10 on the ground, 10 carries for 77 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Goodson, 6 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown. The one thing about Goodson, he's a kid going both ways. 2 interceptions on defense. We returned one of those for a touchdown for the Bulldogs. So he's one of those kids that doesn't leave the field, and when he's out there, he's doing great things on both sides.
Yeah, and going by the stats that you give, you have to assume that there were some pick six, maybe some special teams, short fields, things of that nature, because the stats, when you talk about them, they are impressive, but not for 49 points impressive.
Well, and we've seen that. There's the final 49-20 over East Gaston. Of course, this is the first time Burns has played a 2A team or anything other than a 1A team now in 3 or 4 weeks. So a good win for the Bulldogs. They'll finish the season, conference season with 2 games left against Cherville and Shelby. We'll talk about those, or we'll at least talk about the Cherville game in the second segment. Let's talk about the Crest Forest View game. This one was very surprising to me, Coach, at 9-0 at halftime, but the Chargers were able to kind of, insert themselves in the second half a little bit more and get that game to kind of flip a little bit and go for a big win for the Chargers.
Yeah, there's still some work to be done for Crest on these away trips. You got to remember how many games did they play in a row at home. So it is still a learning process for some of these kids when they get ready to go to an away game. But you see there, Aiden Carson just doing his thing, and the defense was there at 30-0. I think that's the 3rd shutout by Crest defense in a row.
Again, we see the change at quarterback here, so that's something that maybe I don't know if that caused any issues with Crest in the first half, because like I said, it was only 9-0 at halftime. Whether or not the multiple quarterback situation is causing some continuity issues on the Crest offense. There you see, I think that's McSwain on the carry there. He started the second half at quarterback, and it kind of jump-started the Crest offense.
Yeah, and Coach Lloyd, I'm sure, is going to have all of that worked out pretty quick. Eli Hammock, did get some snaps, and looks like the running game was really good. Here's, I believe that was Eli in there, just there.
Well, so the Chargers, like we said, 9-0 at halftime. They pull away in the second half, 30-0. The final score of a Forest View. One of 3 Cleveland County shutouts on Friday night versus our Gaston County brethren. Let's go to the next one. Kings Mountain at Stuart Kramer, 41-0 in this one. So another Big win for Cleveland County on this side. Again, Coach, you mentioned it, the stats when you think about 41 points don't necessarily look like that. Armstrong was 8 of 10 for just 113 yards, 1 touchdown. Gash, his favorite receiver on the night, 6 for 98 as William Vaughn was not able to play with a hamstring, I think. Gash had that touchdown. And then Josiah Hill, we've seen him well over 100 yards in a couple of the ball games this year with multiple touchdowns. Still kept the multiple touchdowns going with 2, but only 12 carries for 57 yards. So when you look at that, you throw for 120 and you rush for your leading rushers for 57. That's not a lot of stats to go with a 41-0 win.
Yeah, and again, we've talked about it. It was a shutout by the defense. Was it a short field? Were there defensive scores? Were there special teams getting the ball close back down into the opposing team's goal line? It's just hard to say, but you're right. The stats sometimes don't match the numbers, and it's going to happen when you have such a gap in talent level at this point in time of the season.
Yeah, speaking of gap, there it is, 41-0 over Stuart Kramer. I don't even know if I said that. Did I say they were at Stuart Kramer? Or did I? I may have said they were somewhere else Friday night. If I did, I apologize. 41-0, Kings Mountain the win over Stuart Kramer. Final game of the week, also a shutout. Shelby at Bessemer City. This one, again, didn't expect it to be close, and it wasn't. Shelby there in the road. White's Randy Evans doing the deal for us as he has done so many times before. Land Farmer 17 of 23 for 220 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tristan Tate, these are a little better stats, though, honestly, for a 49-0 game. Tristan Tate, 13 carries for 132 yards and 3 touchdowns. Majay Thompson, the leading receiver for the Golden Lions, he had 5 catches for 74 yards on the night. So the Golden Lions able to move the ball at will. There you see one of the Tristan Tate touchdowns as he was in for Shelby. And the Golden Lions able to get up and get going. I think actually they got off to a little bit of a slow start in the first quarter before they finally got it rolling, Coach.
Yeah, and you know, this is putting, and we'll find out who the best 2A school is coming out in a couple of weeks, but stat-wise, certainly in this game, boy, you hate to see, boy, that was a tough tackle right there on your starting quarterback. The probably, maybe, and this is shake out in a couple of weeks also, the best 1A school in the conference will come down between Bessemer City and Cherryville here in a couple of weeks. But Bessemer City so far on the season has established itself as a little better of the 1A schools, and you can see how Shelby handled them very easily. It's just so hard to tell that is a 2A school versus a 1A school, and it's the very good 2A school that they're playing against. So it's really hard to get a gauge on where either of these teams might shake out in the playoffs.
Went to the there's the final, Shelby 49-0 over Bessemer City. Went to the Shelby Star website today, and I'm sorry, Alan Ford is not with us today. Of course, Alan retired as the sports director, sports editor of the Shelby Star, and I worked there, but it was 35 years ago at this time. But Joe Hughes does what he can. He's a one-man gang over there for all of Gaston, all of Cleveland. But I'm telling you what, next to nothing on prep sports in the Gaston Gazette / Shelby Star. And but one thing that I did pick up is he used the term Shelby had scored 266 unanswered points because in this 1A segment of their conference, they went 70-0, 70-0, 77-0, and 49-0
Wow.
So 266 unanswered for the Golden Lions at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's no explanation other than it's going to change next year.
Yes.
So that's the only thing that we can say. There's really no explanation for it other than you have one of the perennial 2A schools in the state playing in a split conference with 1A teams that are not known for their prowess in the playoffs. I mean, it'd be different if you're in a split 2A, 1A conference with Mount Airy.
Yeah, or
who's-
Murphy.
or Murphy,
Somebody
or,
that's been to
you
the
know,
the
somebody,
state championship
yeah, I mean,
100 times.
Between Murphy and Mount Airy, they've probably won 45 state championships. So, you know, you're not in a premier 1A conference to begin with. So
No question
it's
about
going to
that.
happen.
Tim, let's go ahead and while we're in the conference action, let's go ahead and throw that graphic up. There's the Big South right now, Coach. As you see, Ashbrook, we didn't talk about it because they're not one of our teams, but Ashbrook upset South Point on Friday night, 17-14. So Ashbrook, with that one loss to Crest, sits atop the Big South standings. South Point at 3-1. Of course, the loss coming to Ashbrook. Kings Mountain's 3-1. The loss coming to South Point. Crest is 3-1. The loss coming to South Point, and Hunter Huss at 3-1 in the conference. That loss coming to Kings Mountain. So there really is quite a mess at the top of the Big South standings right now. And of course, you know, teams can play their way in or out of possibility of a state conference championship. Ashbrook and Kings Mountain in particular play each other this coming Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, that's a five-way tie for first, and Crest and Hunter Huss play, Kings Mountain and Ashbrook play. So two of those teams are going down. They're going to be in the middle of the pack very quickly. South Point may have the easier road to finishing with one loss in the conference.
Right.
Simply because
they've already played Kings
they've
Mountain
already
and
played
Crest.
Kings Mountain Crest, and
Right.
now Ashbrook.
Right.
That's the one
That's
loss.
the other one, right.
And so, you know, and Hunter Huss is still there. I feel like Crest to take care of business. Kings Mountain and Ashbrook will probably be a game to see.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that in the second segment. But a lot of those games will shake themselves out. I'm calling it the Hurricane add-on week. That would bring up Crest and Stuart Kramer having to play. But as far as South Point, and South Point's schedule is a lot easier road than Crest and Kings Mountain. And if we're Cleveland County representing Cleveland County, that makes Ashbrook and Hunter Huss's road a lot tougher also.
All right, so that's the breakdown on the Big South. We'll talk a little bit more about that because of the Kings Mountain Ashbrook game, and we'll do that when you join us back for our second segment. Right after this, you're watching Armchair Quarterback.
Education is our most powerful tool to improve and change our world. Hi, I'm Rhonda Benfield, your host for School Matters. Join me for a new program every other week with information from and about the students and staff of Cleveland County Schools. Discover what our schools are doing to challenge students and help them reach their full potential. You can catch us on Spectrum Cable Channel 19 or stream us live on c19.tv.
Cakes and cookies, toys and gifts, Christmas at your fingertips.
It's the shopping event of the season, the Southern Christmas Show, November 14th through 24th at the Park Expo and Conference Center. Celebrate the 12 days of Christmas, a countdown of Yuletide cheer brimming with festive decor and seasonal magic. Buy tickets early and save at southernChristmasShow.com.
Let's go to the Southern Christmas Show.
Hi, I'm Deb Harden, host of For Your Information. The goal of our show is to educate and entertain you about all things pets throughout Cleveland County. We have various guests joining me each month to talk about dogs, cats, pigs, whatever kind of pets you can think of. Also each month, we will be joined by some furry friends looking for their forever homes. For your information each month right here on C19 TV and online at www.c19.tv.
Cleveland Community College has identified strengthening online learning as the topic for its quality enhancement plan. We're calling it SOUL. SOUL's 5-year implementation plan is focused on continuous improvement of online courses and promoting student success. We're excited for you to take this journey with us.
Hi, I'm Shara Miller, the host of Artworks. Each month we bring to you wonderful, talented artists from here in Cleveland County and the region. We have artists, we have potters, we have painters, we have musicians, we have actors. We just have wonderful artists that come to you and tell you about all that they're doing, their creativity, what inspires them. Join me here on Artworks each month on C19. You can also watch us online at c19.tv.
Welcome back for the second half of Armchair Quarterback. I'm David Allen, joined this week by Coach Guy Suttle. Two-man tag team in it today as, there you go, we'll do a fist bump on that one. Our buddy Paul Foster couldn't be with us today, so it's just the two of us. Here we go with our second segment, and we talk about what's coming up this week. Cherryville at Burns. Don't see this one as being much of a contest, Coach. Burns stepped out of the 1A streak to take on East Gaston Friday night, was able to take care of business 49-20. Cherryville, although they have won 2 straight over Highland Tech and Thomas Jefferson, not going to do much against the Bulldogs.
No, and you know, there's small victories out there for Cherryville. One of them is they're beating two of the 1A schools that they have to compete for a playoff position. We know that they're going to play Bessemer City the last game of the regular season, but there's small victories along the way, and one of them would be to have in your mind that you could score so many points against Burns. 2, to hold Burns to a certain point total. So there could be small victories within the game, even for a contender or someone that's trying to contend for the 1A slot in the playoffs.
No doubt about it. Crest at Hunter Huss. Huss over the years, they're tied for first in the conference. We just showed that graphic a few minutes ago on the first segment, but Hunter Huss has had athletes and has been competitive over the years. Don't really expect to see that on Friday night, as Crest should be able to take care of business.
Yeah, and again, it's a tough place to go play. There's just something about Hunter Huss with you're kind of down in that valley, in that hole of the stadium, and everything kind of gets closed in on you, and it's different. It's just a little bit different. It can be kind of different in going into that game. It's a tough place to go and play, especially you know that skill position wise, Hunter Huss is gonna have good skill position players. Where they usually come up a little short is the front 5 on the offensive line.
Wouldn't have thought this next one would have been much of a contest, but all of a sudden Ashbrook is 7-1. They beat South Point this past Friday night 17-14, and here They're going to get to go to Kings Mountain. The Mountaineers, I think you've already said it, are favored maybe to win this ball game, but this one not like some of these other ones that we've talked about where we just go, yeah, ho-hum, Cleveland County's going to win. This is one where Kings Mountain's going to have to play good football.
Yeah, if South Point and Ashbrook comes out with South Point winning 28-7, you're thinking, okay, here we go. Kings Mountain has got to show up, they got to play, but it's going to be a win. With it, South Point being upset, I think that was the first time in 17 or 18 tries.
17, yes, sir.
Between Ashbrook and South Point. That's gonna add a little more salt, a little more pepper to the game on Friday night at Gamble Stadium. And anything can happen. Ashbrook is going to be excited. It's whether or not they're too excited.
And
Kings Mountain's got to take care of business.
Ashbrook could be coming off a little bit of a letdown too after the big win against South Point. We'll have to wait and see. Final game of the week, East Gaston is at Shelby. Burns just beat East Gaston 49-20. Don't really see the Golden Lions having much trouble with East Gaston on Friday night. And of course, then that sets up, we talked about the Big South. That looked like it's coming down to anybody's game, 5 different teams with a chance to win. Pretty much it's going to be the Shelby Burns game winner is going to take all the marbles in that conference.
And we knew that in August, that's probably the way that conference is going to shake out. I'm with you, David. It's going to be in the 50s again. And I'm not talking about the temperature. I'm talking about the score of the game. And I think that Shelby will really, really, really try hard to pitch a shutout here, no matter which group of athletes are on the field for Shelby at the end of the game. That's kind of a pride thing. So, it's going to come down to the Burns-Shelby game.
Absolutely. So that's our matchups for this week, Week 10. Hard to believe. Cherryville at Burns, Crest at Hunter Huss, Ashbrook at Kings Mountain, and East Gaston at Shelby. Congratulations to the Gardner-Webb Bulldogs. They got the win over Lindenwood on Saturday, 42-35. Gardner-Webb threw for 185 yards, had 2 running backs over 100 yards each, significantly over 100 yards each in that one. So good balance for Gardner-Webb and a good win. Now they've got Southeast Missouri State next up on the schedule. Again, once Gardner-Webb got out of the SAC 8, we have no idea about these teams they're playing anymore. And honestly, I don't know. And of course, Dr. Downs didn't have anything to do, who's the president currently at Gardner-Webb, had nothing to do with Gardner-Webb's move to get out of the division, essentially Division II, and move up to 1AA, and now whatever, FBS, FBC, whatever, all that works.
Yeah, all that
First
works.
Baptist Church, I guess that's FBC. But I don't know if they wish they had just kept it well enough alone and still played Lenore Ryan Presbyterian or not. But Southeast Missouri State, that's who they got on Saturday.
Yeah, and I can't help you there. I was struggling right there with you, not sure what that brings to the table or anything else. And I know it's a combination conference or some conferences that merged together. It would have been nice if it had been a little more local flavor to it, but
it is what it is.
Good luck, Gardner-Webb. I cannot comment really on this game at all.
When was the last time the couple of the service academies were in the top 25? Army and Navy in the top 25, both won on Saturday. Navy over Charlotte and Army over East Carolina. Now, a little bit different for Navy this coming week as they'll take on Notre Dame. Should be an interesting one, only because Carolina's kind of our team. We talk about them. UNC at Virginia. They got to get a win. That's all I can say. Georgia State at Appalachian. I talked to Coach Ware this week. The Appalachian State Mountaineers have got to get a win. This is a must-win situation up there for Sean Clark on Saturday. Missouri is at Alabama. Alabama has dropped to number 15 in the polls. I can't remember when Alabama was as low as number 15. They lost to Tennessee on Saturday in a stunner. Texas at Vanderbilt. Coach, you wouldn't have thought anything about this one a couple of weeks ago. Now all of a sudden Vanderbilt's number 25. They've beaten Alabama, and now Texas is going to come reeling in there after losing to Georgia on Saturday night.
Well, first off, Alabama's 0 for 2 against teams from Tennessee right now. So
there you go.
Vanderbilt and Tennessee. Going back to the service academies and the East Carolina, if I'm pretty sure I read this correctly, that cost the coaches at East Carolina, cost him his job on that one.
Oh, wow.
He was replaced or told yesterday that his services wouldn't be needed this week. So.
Well, that's not a bad loss. I mean,
No.
Army's in the top 25, so that's tough to lose your job on that one. It'd been different if Charlotte had gone down there and whooped. Well, they did. LSU at Texas A&M, the biggest game in the top 25. Number 8 LSU, number 14 Texas A&M. Should be a good one. And then this one is normally good just because of the state rivalry, but Florida State at Miami, and Florida State got beat again. Duke beat them this past Saturday, so I don't expect that one to be of any consequence except for the fact that Miami cannot play defense. They can outscore you, but they cannot stop you, as we saw against Louisville. I think the final in that one was 52-45.
Yeah, and they're playing, Miami is 6th or 7th. Let me make sure. Yeah, 6th in the country. So it could be a real interesting, I just don't, the way Florida State's season is gone, I just don't see it happening. I don't see an upset there.
Indiana, I just was telling Coach during the commercial break, in my lifetime, Indiana has not been relevant in football. Now, back when Bobby Knight was the basketball coach, they had a lot of really good years in basketball. They absolutely beat the brakes off of Matt Rule, former Carolina Panthers head coach, and the Nebraska Cornhuskers, which was also one of those traditional powers for years and years. 56-7 on Saturday. They're up to number 13 in the poll. Keep an eye on an undefeated Indiana University football team. Hey, we've only got 2 minutes left, but that's good because we really don't need to talk about the Panthers very long. Possibly the worst rock bottom type game yesterday for the Panthers. The Commanders without Jaden Daniels, who only completed 2 passes in the game because he got hurt. 40-7 Washington over Carolina.
Yeah, I can't even blame this one on the offensive line. I mean, it wasn't, it's everything. Every aspect, all 3 phases are bad. Just not exactly sure what direction they're going to go in. I mean, there's no way to go but up naturally, but I just don't see it happening this season. They're out.
As far as the NFL is concerned, they're spending a lot of time talking about the New York Jets on ESPN. The Jets lost again on Sunday night. The Pittsburgh Steelers changed quarterbacks, didn't seem to make a difference. They improved to 5-2 with the win over the Jets. The Jets dropped to 2-5. Kansas City is still unbeaten. Patrick Mahomes, like 150 yards and 2 interceptions yesterday. They still beat the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are reeling. They've got to play the Cowboys next. The Cowboys at least were off this week, so I don't have to worry about telling you that the Cowboys lost. Detroit knocked off Minnesota, who was undefeated, and so you got to think that Detroit right now is the best team in the NFC. Coach, I'm sorry, I don't have time to come back to you. We got to go. We're out of here. We had that 5-minute break, and now we've got to go. Hey, thanks for watching Armchair Quarterback. We'll see you right here next week on Armchair Quarterback.